I say, I'm not sure I cope with it. But and I think
Why
some of
aren't
it
you unsure?
I think some of it is that there's so many things happening at once. EFT
Mhm.
is exploding, and my book I wrote last year, we are now talking about EFIT, emotionally
Mhm.
focused individual therapy. We are doing a study which
Mhm.
suddenly has to go online. This is a nightmare. This is a nightmare, okay? And this is just one
Okay.
little thing. And so many things are happening. It's suddenly very hard to
Mhm.
prioritize and keep your balance. And I'm aware that part of me just wants to go away and hide under a rock and
Mhm.
write my books and write my books and see my clients and do what I love. I love supervision. I love
Mhm.
talking to therapists and looking at a piece of tape of therapy or hearing where they are stuck. And together we play with it and we discover things and we say, oh yes, this client is stuck here and and okay, we know how to help with that. And I love that discovery. And when I write, I discover. It's almost like I have another person in my head talking to me. I write something down and I look at it, I think, I didn't know I knew that. Where did that come from? That's interesting. This is what I love. But sometimes these days there is not much room for that. So we have been very successful in putting our message out, and this is wonderful. And now it's hard to handle how successful we are, but I think we are helping. I think we are. I hope we are making a real contribution to psychotherapy and to how couples can learn about their relationships and basically, to helping us all grow as human beings, because that for me is what therapy is about.
I can totally agree with you. And what I found so interesting, what you said was that you're dealing with challenges with a curiosity, that you're so curious about how to solve problems. I love that. How did you get that from? How did you get that curiosity?
I don't know. That is what has always um, sort of led me forward. I remember when I first started working with couples, and really there was no guidance that helped in the literature or in the studies. And so I felt completely lost, even though I thought I knew how to do therapy with groups and individuals and families. But then I started working with couples. I thought, oh, this is overwhelming, especially all this emotion. And then it was like I became fascinated. I became, I just got hooked. I became like, what is happening here? What is happening in this drama? What is, oh, there's patterns in the drama. Oh, but how do these emotional messages make sense? Oh, there is that message again. This is, and somehow that whole process of ordering, of finding order. Carl Rogers, who I think was brilliant, said something like, "I enjoy discovering the order in experience," and that has always resonated with me. And I think that's a very human thing, is to say, okay, life's very big. Right now, right here in front of me, what is happening? And there's lots of different levels. So it's not obvious from this place over here, it looks like this is happening, but from this place over here, it looks different. And there's some sort of joy in being able to say, it makes sense. Um, this is true in everything for me. Argentine tango is like the chess of social dancing. Okay, it's very difficult. It's stupidly difficult. Okay,
Okay.
and I did not come with any kind of talent and I came as an older person. Most people start dancing tango at 22, okay? So, how old was I? I can't remember, but I certainly wasn't 22. But, and it was very difficult. But the point was, I looked at it, I watched it, ordinary tango, not Dancing with the Stars. That's just silly. That's just theater. That's boring, okay? Because it's over dramatic. And I went to my local community and I watched these people get up, and some of them were strangers, I knew that, and suddenly move into this incredible synchrony with each other, move together to this beautiful music and doing all kinds of different dances, not patterns like ballroom, all these different, and I and it was the same thing. I said, oh, how do they do that? How do they do that? That's impossible. How do they do that? And then somehow it looked like therapy. How does this distressed couple move from what I see now, what I saw when they came in 12 weeks ago, and suddenly now they are having this incredible bonding conversation. Oh, and so I just always had that. Perhaps I had a very strange childhood. It's quite weird. No wonder I am quite strange. I grew up in a pub, in an English pub, and when other children were playing with dolls, I was standing on a stool, washing glasses, because in my world, children worked. Okay, it was just accepted. Okay, children were expected to help. Okay, so I stood on a stool, drying glasses and putting them on shelves, and I watched adults. Fight and cry and play and joke and tell stories about the war. It wasn't right after the war, but the war is still alive in England. Okay, it's in that generation. My father and my hometown was a naval town. Everyone in that town had been massively changed and impacted by the war, and they were still processing it years later. And I watched all this as a child, and I think it was a strange childhood. I mean, I just got used to seeing people cry and fight and get drunk on Friday night, and it was from a position of safety, because my father was this kind of huge protective presence, and I knew, and everyone else knew, that I was in this sort of bubble, and that nothing was going to hurt me. Okay, so I could watch all this from complete safety and say, oh, why does this man come in every evening to the pub at 6 o'clock and say the exact same things to my father? And my father says the exact same things back. And they do this for 15 minutes. My mind wasn't able to say this, but basically I think what I was saying was, this can't be about information, because they do the same thing. There isn't any information. It's the same, right? Oh, it's about how my daddy is with this man. And this man comes in to talk to my daddy. And it's all right that they actually say the same things to each other, because it's not about that. It's about the fact that my daddy smiles at him, and this man looks sad when he comes in. And then when my daddy talks to him about nothing, about the weather, then this man smiles back, and it's something to do with that. And so I think I learned about being very curious about human beings, and very curious about emotions and how we work, and very curious about relationships from very young. So, you know, I didn't even know. I was told by a very tall, intimidating nun
Oh, what?
that I was to go to university and study English literature. So I did.
Yes, you studied
No,
English.
nobody told me about psychology.
Mhm.
I didn't even know it existed. So I went and studied English literature. And I think that too, stories and motivation and how people's lives unfold, what happens to people, how they understand their lives, how the way they understand their life also creates their life. That was part of my reality even before I got into working with people. And the first people I worked with were disturbed adolescents in a residential treatment center. And
So
those
help me
kids,
for a second. How did it happen that you started with literature and then started to work with young adults?
well, I was a teacher, and then this place, I moved to Canada,
Mhm.
and I needed a job. I was completely broke. And this big residential treatment center were hiring counselors. And so they hired me. I had no training in counseling. You know, they hired me. And these kids, well, it was just like being in the pub, really. These kids were yelling and fighting and crying. And I thought, oh, yeah, okay. This is all right. You know, I can find my way through this. And those kids taught me so much. I remember some of those kids. I often think where they are and what happened to them in their lives. Some of them were very traumatized and very wounded already, even at 14 or 15. And I learned a lot from them. And, you know,
What did
then
you
I
learn from
thought, oh,
them?
I'm going to do psychology, right?
It sounds like a wonderful, beautiful life full of adversity, and you overcome that. So there's so much resilience. That's amazing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think people are very resilient if they, well, this is my work. So
Mhm.
people are resilient if they have at least one relationship, or hopefully more, where they feel worthy and special, and they get the message that they are competent and that they are strong enough to take life on. And I think I was very lucky in that I had that somewhat from my grandmother,
Mhm.
but mostly from my father, who was a most unusual man. He was basically a farm boy from England who lied about his age and went into the British Navy at 15, and had been all over the world in the Navy, had fought in the war. And I was his only child. I was his only daughter. And I don't know how he managed to parent me the way he did, because it certainly wasn't the normal way to parent a girl in England at that time. He loved it when I was assertive. He loved it when I argued with him. He loved it when I said, no, I don't want to do that. And he'd say, really? Oh, and what would you like to do? I mean, he was a very special man. I have no idea how he knew to do that. So I think my resilience comes from that kind of sense of secure attachment, which is how I understand. This is what we try to create in our couples, in couples therapy. We don't just want couples to be able to negotiate better. This is the booby prize.
Mhm.
Do you understand booby prize? I'm okay.
And
We don't want that. We don't want couples to be able to discuss nicely. Yeah,
mhm.
sure, okay. We want to build bonds, emotional bonds. And because we know that these emotional bonds are the source of resilience, they make us strong. We're social, bonding mammals. Love is not just sentimentality or a myth, or for adults, some sort of mixture of sexuality and sentimentality. It's an ancient, wired-in survival code that's designed to keep a few people you totally trust and you depend on close to you. And when we don't have that, we start to fall apart. Our nervous system goes into alarm. Our brain doesn't put our world together clearly in a coherent way because we're filled with alarm and vigilance for danger. Our bodies start to fall apart. You know, we are like fish in the ocean, and the ocean we swim in are our close relationships. So, you know, if you take a fish out of the ocean, or if you have an ocean that has no oxygen in it and no safety in it, then the fish starts to look very strange indeed. But I think I was lucky in my life to meet people and to, you know, have people feel loved. And it sounds so corny, you know, it sounds sort of touchy-feely. Well, it's not touchy-feely, it's science now. And we have changed attachment science, which is what I base my therapy on, what I base EFT on, emotionally focused therapy, for those who don't know what it is. But, you know, attachment science has taught us so much about who we are, and it has already revolutionized our parenting. You know, we don't treat children, at least in many areas of the world, we don't treat children the same way as we did 20 years ago, 30 years ago. We don't drop them off at the hospital to have an operation and go back, pick them up a week later. If you said that to parents now, they'd say, oh, that would traumatize the child. People forget until the beginning of the 70s, that was actually the norm in many parts of North America. So attachment science has changed how we see children, how we see children's needs, how we respond to children. And I think it was not applied to adults until about the beginning of this century, which is a crazy thing. I mean, but it wasn't, because we were in love with the idea that adults were somehow self-sufficient, you know, grown up. You know, we never grow up to the point where we don't need other people. It's a silly idea. But people weren't interested. When I first started to talk about adult attachment as a clinician, my social psychological colleagues were studying it, but when I started to bring it into clinical work, people would walk out of my talks. They would refuse to publish my article. Oh yeah, they would send my articles back with long diatribes about how totally mistaken I was. And then,
so how did you find it? Let me ask, like, how did you find the courage to continue? Because it's amazing and so important that you did, but how did you find the courage?
Well, I would get quite hurt by the rejections and the sort of dismissal. Okay, it was dismissal. It was like, no, you go away. You right? No. And there's also an issue in there about me being a woman, I think. Okay. Yeah, for sure. You know, and I'm a Canadian, so I'd go to big American conferences and like, well, who are you, strange little Canadian woman? What are you doing here talking this nonsense about how vulnerable we are to each other and how much we need each other, and how that's true of adults, and how we create panic in each other when we suddenly withdraw our love and our care. So, you know, I think I would get hurt and devastated, and then I would come back. And I had a supportive husband. That made a big difference. He's a rock. But what really happened is I'd go and do my clinical work, which is always the place I stand. My rock and I'd go and I look at my couples, and I'd look at the individuals I was working with, because EFT is known as a couples therapy, but we have always worked with individuals and families. We just haven't talked about it as much. And I'd go and work with my clients and my couples, and I'd go, hey, I don't care what the big theories are out there. They're wrong. I could look at this, look at what just happened here. This is what happened here. Well, wait a minute, am I sure? Am I really understanding this? Yes, there it is again. There's the pattern. This is, so then you say, I remember once I said to my husband when it was quite bad, probably just before the turn of the century, 1998 or 1999 or so, when nobody was interested in adult attachment. I think I said to my husband, oh, I'll give up and just go and study depression or something because I'm getting depressed. And he said, and then I said, no, I don't really care. I don't really care what they think, and I don't really care what the big theories are, and I don't really care. I don't really care about anything. I'm just going to do my thing, and I'm going to say what I think, and I'm going to believe what I see with my couples and my people, and I'm going to do I'm going to say what I think, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, you know. But that's the only way I can be. So I just said, I'm just going to keep doing this, and then the research from my wonderful social psychological colleagues and now neuroscientists, and you know, I did a brain scan study in our latest study with a man called Jim Cohn from the University of Virginia, who's a neuroscientist who puts people in brain scan machines and looks at what happens to them. And we found that when we help them have these bonding conversations, the person in the when the person in the machine was threatened with electric shock, when their partner held their hand after the bonding conversations, it completely changed how their brain responded to the threat of shock and to the shock itself. It changed the pain level, it changed the threat. Their brain just stayed in a resting state while their partner held their hand after the bonding conversations. When they were distressed and couldn't have the bonding conversations, holding their partner's hand didn't make any difference to how awful their brain responded to the shock. So neuroscientists started to look at attachment, social psychologists started to look at attachment, and gradually now, at last, clinicians, I hope, are starting to understand what I believe, which is what I said in my book I put out last year, Attachment Theory in Practice, that this science has the ability to bring the field of mental health together, to bring psychotherapy together, to give us a map to people's most basic needs, basic fears. This science is gold. It's the holy grail for us in psychology. And you know, in the end, it's not all the studies and all the elegant concepts and all the, it's not that attachment really sort of grabs who we are as human beings and gives us a map to that. In the end, for me, it is that this science never lets me down. When I walk into somebody's life, individual, couple, or family, who is in pain, and who says to me, life is too hard, it is overwhelming, I have lost, as a lady said to me yesterday, I've lost my way, and it's too hard, and how did I get here, and I'm losing my life, time is going by, I don't feel loved, I don't feel loved, I don't feel important, I don't feel effective, you know, and I go in and I listen to that, and even though you've worked with people for years and you've written books, everyone has their own version of that, and there is a point where there's a human being in front of you just saying, it's too hard to be human. You know, and you say, yep, it is. attachment science and the work we've done in EFT with emotion, learned from people like Carl Rogers, it always gives me a way to understand, and it always gives me a way through with that person. You know, and I learn from my clients. Every client I see, I learn. Like my lady I saw the other day, such a intelligent lady, such a brave lady. And I said, could you help me? We've had a couple of very difficult sessions, you know, but you're smiling at me and you look better. Your face looks different and you're talking to me in a different way. And she says, yes. And I said, well, can you help me? What's happening here? And she says, I don't know. And this is what people say. I don't know. I understand things in a different way, and I feel my feelings, and somehow when I talk to you, I don't feel so alone.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow we go places with those feelings that I've never really gone before, and I start to get what I'm afraid of in life and what I'm really longing for. And even though I don't have what I'm longing for, that's easier because I get it now. And that's a different version of what of what I always hear, but it still fascinates me. It's still amazing. And attachment science and understanding how to work with emotion never lets me down. So, you know, that is why I'm so sure about it. That is why I like it so much. And it doesn't let me down in my own life either. You know.
Can you tell, because it sounds so miraculous, so wonderful, and I know, like practicing it, it is like it's happening wondrous. But can you explain the magic of EFT? Like, why does it work so well?
It works well. I can try in a few minutes. It works because my understanding is it goes to the heart of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when somebody comes in, there's so much going on in people's lives. There's so many levels. There's so many issues. There's so many, you know, somebody says, you know, I teach, so I make tapes and I show myself working with people. And I just did one with a woman called Natalie, EFIT, individual EFT, right? And she comes in and, you know, she says in the first session, she says, well, I'm got a gambling addiction. I'm clinically depressed. I've lost my job because I blow up at people. When I blow up at people, I weep and then I go in my room and I close the door and I won't talk to my husband, and my marriage isn't so good and I'm a bad mom and I've got chronic pain and I've got fibromyalgia, and you listen to it and you go, whoa, right? Yeah. And then if you know how to focus, you go in. And what John Bowlby, who was the father of attachment theory, who died just as people were really starting to listen to him, ironic, in the adult world anyway, he had already contributed to the whole understanding of infants and mothers. But what he said is, at the heart of every mental health problem or adjustment problem, there are frightening, alien, and unacceptable emotions. And they take us over. Mm-hmm. And that is why we're scared of emotion. Indeed, it can take us over. It's supposed to do that. It's supposed to take us over and orientate us, right? Mm-hmm. And particularly emotions like fear, sadness, shame. And what he basically said is, if you want people to change and grow, you have to go there with them. You don't stand outside and give them advice. No, you have to go into the emotion with them and help them accept their pain, make it less frightening, Help them see it as normal and natural, not alien. Help them see it as acceptable. And then they find new ways of putting that pain together and growing. You know, I mean, what I see in EFT is EFT works because it's on target, because we know how to focus. We know how to go down into the heart of the matter. And we know how to help people with these huge emotional dramas that define who they are, that take over their life. You know, one lady said to me recently, you know, nothing's changed on one level, but everything's changed because I get that my whole life, even from the time I was very small and now I'm 60 years old, has been an incredible fight between longing for closeness, feeling empty and alone and deprived of love, and being terrified of closeness, because I feel that the only closeness I've known, it resulted in someone taking me over, me being powerless, me being hurt all the time. And she said, I've just bounced between those two things my whole life. And now, and I say, so now what? Now what? And she says, now I just feel sad, because what's here now is, I know the fear, but what I feel is the longing. And I say, yes. And if she stays with the longing and understands her fears, I believe that if you know what you want, it sounds, we're talking about very complex things in very simple ways, but never mind, right? If you know what you want, and you really know, and you accept it, and you know it in your body, I don't mean a thought, you know it in your body emotionally, well, you have more of a chance of finding it. This is true. You know, people don't know what they're looking, you know. I say to my daughter, you know, I have this strange family. I have a stepchild and two adopted children, and all from different countries. And I have people a young woman who came to live with us years ago and never left. She didn't have anywhere to live. And I have this strange sort of amorphous family, you know. But I look
by the
at
way,
them.
that sounds so beautiful and colorful. I just have to say that. It's just not like strange, but colorful.
Okay. And I can't even remember why we're talking about them now. I'm having fun talking to you, so why am I talking about my family? You tell me.
You wanted to, like, when you were talking, I was like, perfect. She's getting to the point of
Oh yes, my daughter.
the emotions of like navigation.
Yes,
Navigation.
emotions are a compass for us. And you know, I talk to my daughter and she says, Mom, I can't do this online dating. And I say, yeah, sweetie, it's hard, you know. Well, because they're not who they say they are. You know, they're not. They're not who they. I say, yeah, I get. So then we talk about, well, who are you looking for?
Mm-hmm.
And we play, and we use different names for this person. But what is good is, I feel like at this point now, she has a sense of what she's looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So she meets a man, you know, and I say, what do you think about him? And she says, yeah, you know, he's not super hot. You know, he's not, you know, my girlfriends don't think looks particularly terrific. But, you know, Mom, I like him because he's kind, and I don't even know if he's interested in me, but when I'm with him, I feel safe, and he's honest with me, and I think we could be really good friends. And I start to like him, and so she talks about him, and I think, good, you know, she has some sort of compass, and she's using good a good emotional compass instead of, oh, this guy's exciting, or, oh, this guy, all my friends think he's so hot, you know, let's go with the person that society tells us is, you know, terrific. And so I think, you know, I see her struggling with that. And I think a big thing in EFT is, for many models of therapy, it seems to me that emotions are framed as the enemy. There are something you have to control, you have to meditate away, you have to create coping mechanisms. And of course, you do have to regulate your emotions. But what we have learned is the way you do that is to go into them in a safe way. And the regulation is something that happens organically. It's not something that you create from the outside by saying, you know, okay, when you're upset, would you please breathe? You know, breathe. This is useful. I'm not saying it's to, you know, teach people to just slow down and breathe. Yes, but it's so not enough. You know, it's like, yeah, all right, you can do. I'll give you a good example. Years ago, I developed an airplane phobia.
Oh, okay.
Very bad idea, because I was flying all over the place. Yeah. Very bad, very, very bad. Okay, so I am a psychologist. Mm-hmm. So I found every trick, every tip, every technique, everything. I knew how to have imagery. I knew how to breathe. I knew how to. I tried drugs. You know, they put me to sleep. That was no good. You know, and I sort of reduced it. I kind of reduced it by maybe, I don't know, 20%. Okay, but it was still there. So I went to a therapist, right? And it's people don't want to do therapy with me because they know who I am. But anyway, you know, okay. I say, will you do therapy with me? There's a long silence on the phone, right? Anyway, I went to this therapist. She was great. And what I learned in the therapy was, I learned what the fear was. Oh, so I am medicating myself and doing these things because the fear is about the plane crashing. No, the fear is not about the plane crashing. No, it is not. What is it then? So for this, you have to go into it, okay? Not just cope with it. What is it then? It's about turbulence. Oh, well, what's that? Because turbulence doesn't last for long, and I haven't actually had any terrible experiences. It's about what happens in my body when turbulence hits. Oh, what's that? Oh, what's the first time I remember that? Oh, that's about this experience that I had when I was 4 years old, and which was completely overwhelming. As a 4-year-old child, I was given to another child I didn't know who was 2 years older, and I was put on a bus to go into the next town, get off the bus, get on another bus, and go to this building where I knew no one, where everyone talked in a different way from me because I was a poor child in an expensive school. Let's not go into how that happened, but it did, okay? I didn't have the same background. I wasn't from the same religion. I didn't speak in the same way. And all the people in this building were tall with black clothes on. They were nuns. And all the pictures in the building were of a man with his chest open, with his heart or on a cross. Okay, and I was speechlessly terrified. And my body was so agitated that I wouldn't eat and I wouldn't go to the washroom from 9 in the morning until I left the school at 4.
Wow.
And yeah, wow. And I had completely blocked, you know, it was like I had, but if I listened to the emotion and the feeling in my body, I understood that this feeling in my stomach was about, I'm in a foreign environment, I'm out of control, I'm going to some place where I don't know anybody, I'm going to some American city to give a talk, I don't know anyone there, I'm somehow adrift from my world, I'm feeling the same feeling. So in other words, if you get to know your emotions and you sit in them, you can regulate them and order them. And suddenly, when I'm sitting on a plane, I go, oh, there it is again. Right, I know that one. It's okay. And flying just changed. I would find myself sitting in the airport lounge reading my book. In fact, I nearly missed a flight because I was reading my novel. And I suddenly look around and I'm the only person in the lounge and they're saying, Sue Johnson. Everyone's got on the plane. If you knew how different that was than a few years before, well, I would be sitting in the airport lounge, wired with, okay. So that's a sort of example of what I mean. And I think, we work with emotion. It's called emotionally focused therapy. We see emotion as our friend. We go into it. We trust it. We see it as a process that emotion colors everything. Emotion colors your world, tells you what matters, helps you create meanings, creates expectations. It's also the way you communicate with other human beings. It's the music of the dance with other human beings. It defines the dance with other human beings. The emotional music you're playing in a relationship defines the dance. So we change relationships by changing the emotional music. Hey, you want to have someone dance a waltz when tango music is playing? Lots of luck. You can teach them the steps of the waltz until you're purple. When the tango music is playing, they can't do waltz. So I think we've learned from working with couples, particularly where the emotion is so strong, how to work with emotion, how to make it our friend, how to take people into it, how to take them through it. And I think that we find that in our own lives, we have 70 people now who go all over the world teaching EFT, amazing group of people. And I think those people people tell us, we do research on our trainings. Of course we do research on everything. So, we do research on whether our therapy works, and we have all kinds of evidence for that. We do research on how it works, and we do research on our trainings. And what people tell us is, your training has helped me be a better therapist. Your training has helped me work with emotion and turn it into a real way of creating change. And your training has changed my life. Your training has changed the way I see my kids, the way I see my husband. And we say, yeah, because attachment science is about understanding who we are as human beings. It doesn't explain everything. Of course it doesn't. It's a theory. It's nothing. There is no theory in the whole world that explains everything, right? But it sure tells us a lot about who we are as human beings.
And I loved your story because you showed so many important details. You showed how we can approach emotion, or that emotion is also part in our bodies, that we can feel it, that it's actually about feeling our bodies, that it's present. And you also told a story about even we as therapists, we're learning, and that we have to be nice to ourselves, that we're not perfect, that we're training and learning together and striving for better together. And I love the way you're doing it.
Yeah, and I think there's something about perfection. Our society wants gurus, our field wants perfect gurus and magic. Especially a few years ago, there was a whole thing about, oh, you want a technique where you ask just a few questions and suddenly you create magic. I think that's a very bad road to go down. I'm not magic as a therapist. I make mistakes. I get lost in sessions. This is silly, it's not, You don't have to. People say to me, somebody said to me the other day, you must be such a perfectionist. I just roared with laughter. I said, I'm not at all. I just assume that this is good today. And when I read it tomorrow, I'll say, I'm very critical of my work, actually. I can read something, I can read it, and I can go, yeah, this is good. And then I come back a week later and say, oh, you know, I could have said this, I could have said that, I could have, that's a stupid way to say that. Why didn't I? So, and I assume that everything's just a work in progress, and we are a work in progress. And when I look at what's happening right now in the world, our civilization is certainly a work in progress. If I had not done psychology, I would have studied history. I love history, particularly the Middle Ages. Don't ask me why, I don't know. I used to sing as a child in a cathedral that was built in 1008. And maybe that's why I loved that cathedral. It sung with you. If you sang a solo in that cathedral, the stones sung with you. And you knew that there had been people in that church for centuries who'd sung to those stones, and those stones had sung back. When I look at history, there's no perfection. We're a work in progress. Civilization is a work in progress. Right now, it feels like we're in a bit of trouble, actually.
We are a little bit, like slightly said, but what would you say, what would people need so that we are like at least taking the next step into
well, I tried to talk about this in my book Love Sense.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, I've written 2 books for the public, and they were the hardest thing I've ever written, because
Wow.
I'm trying to say a lot in very simple terms, and in terms that turn people on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In Love Sense, I really struggled with what is the meaning of all this for a larger society.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fascinated by the idea of civilization and what civilization means. Somebody once asked Mahatma Gandhi in England what he thought of British civilization. And he said he thought it would be a very good idea. In other words, he said, you think you have it? You think you have it? Take a look. And I think he would say the same if he was alive now. He'd say, oh, you people who feel so superior maybe to the rest of the world sometimes, to other states, who through the accidents of history don't have all the advantages we have in the West. Oh, you who clever people, just have a look at whether we've really got civilization. Civilization is about people being able to come together and see each other and respond to our very basic needs for safety and care. And to do that just because we're human beings. Attachment theory says we are the same family. We are the same family. We all have the same emotions, the same fears, the same needs. And the only way we're going to survive as individuals, in families, in society, as a species, is to come together and understand who we are, and to be able to come together in that and to connect and move together. If we do that, we can solve anything.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't do that, if we stay in politics as a zero-sum game, I win, you lose. That's fine for me sometimes. But when you lose, I lose too, because we're on the same planet, we're the same people. But it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It's not right.
I totally agree.
But now we're going huge here. Let's not discuss world. I don't know enough to discuss the state of the world. So
let me ask you a question. Why do you think are people afraid of connection? If that's what we all are looking for or longing for, why are people
because we're very vulnerable, and because our need to belong and to be seen. Somebody who said, we all want, I think it was an attachment theorist, said we all want to hide, but it's a tragedy not to be seen. I think it was Fairbairn. You know, we are scared that we will be rejected, we will be abandoned, that we will feel vulnerable, that we will call and no one will come, that we will feel this aloneness. I mean, what attachment says is that aloneness is the most devastating pain of all, and the one that our nervous systems absolutely cannot deal with because it's the ultimate threat, you know. And so I think we know we're vulnerable. We know that other people can hurt us more than anything else in the world, that we can be rejected and abandoned. And many of us have had very, very, very bad histories of people doing just that. So then to open up and reach and let yourself long for love and actually take the risk of reaching for it, because it is a risk, is almost impossible. But then you have a dilemma, because if you don't do that, you live your life alone. And that is for me, the ultimate human dilemma. Risk, and you could be hurt and rejected and abandoned. Yes. Don't risk. You're alone forever. Yes. Stuck. Everyone has to go through that. And adult life, so much of adult life, it seems to me, is about that. And there are no answers to that. You're simple. It's something we're all caught in all the time. Everywhere. It's just part of who we are. I just remember some lady I worked with, who I put in a book years ago. She had terminal cancer, and her husband kept saying to her, "You're fine, you're fine. You'll be fine, you'll be fine." He was a doctor, okay, and he was terrified of losing his wife. And "You're fine, you're fine." And he thought he was trying to support her, but she turned to him and said, "Look, you can't deal with me dying. I can deal with me dying, but I can't stand beside you when it means I'm dying alone. If you can't be with me, I have to go away, because standing beside you when I know I'm dying, while you stand there and tell me I'm not, is too painful. So I can deal with dying. I just can't deal with dying alone." And he was a big doctor who couldn't cure his wife. And he was depressed. Was he? No, he was just a human being faced with overwhelming loss and trying desperately to deny what was going on. You could see him. You could see him. He was just going, right. And is that depression? Well, I don't know. You can call it that if you want. Yes, whatever we call it, that's the most human thing in the world. And when he understands that he's actually abandoning his wife by doing that, not helping, and that they can weep together, then everything changes. So it goes to the heart of who we are as human beings, at least how I understand who we are as human beings. And if you don't struggle with that, if some of us say, "I'm not struggling with that, I reject it, I don't need, I won't need, I'm going to control other people, I'm going to be in charge, I'm going to shut other people out, I'm going to numb out," well, guess what? That's just another rabbit hole. Because sooner or later, then you're all alone again, just in a different way. And it's like,
So how can EFT or EFIT help us or help people to take that risk, to say, yes, I'm here and I'm present and I'm facing all my fears and sadnesses?
I think that is what we've learned to do with couples. Couples have shown us how to do that, to have what we call a hold me tight conversation. And we've taken the hold me tight program based on the book, and it's online now. This www.holdmetightonline.com, and I think we show people how to do that. Number one is to recognize how you dance together in a way that freaks each other out and leaves each other alone. You know, I mean, in my own marriage, it's been amazingly helpful to realize that we are both amazingly strong people. And when we get into a fight, we terrify each other. Okay, like,
Yeah.
right. So first of all, to see the darts we get caught in,
Mm-hmm.
and how we can hurt each other, and then to be able to recognize how vulnerable we are and what we long for, and that there's nothing wrong with that longing. It doesn't mean we're weak or any, it just means we're human. And to be able to,
Mm-hmm.
what we do is we really help people accept those longings and fears, share them, and find ways to ask for what they need in a way that pulls the other person close. That's what we do. And wow, you know what? After 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I think every EFT therapist would say this, when a couple does that in your office, therapists come out of their office and go, yes, yes, you know, and the therapist goes, yes, right? It's like this incredible thing where you see these two people open up to each other. And we know that what defines love relationships is emotional accessibility and responsiveness. That's what defines, are you there for me? A-R-E, are you emotionally accessible, responsive, and engaged? And we know that this process of opening up, sharing vulnerability, responding to vulnerability, holding each other, that this creates a positive, loving relationship, and that grows people. All the cliches, you know, love grows people. Oh God, if you saw that on a bumper sticker, you'd say, oh, how nauseating. It's actually true, you know, like love, but now we know what that means. No, wait a minute. Infatuation doesn't grow people. Sort of weird Hollywood love. No, wait a minute. What are we talking? We're talking about this. We're talking about this here. Oh, these conversations grow people. So we know how to walk people into that. And for me, when we first started in EFT, I didn't know why we were getting the results we got. In my first study, I went through the data 3 times. I ran it through the computer 3 times because I didn't believe it. Okay, I thought, no, this is wrong. This is baloney. This is too much. I must have made a mistake. So we went through it again and again and again. And, you know, it's kind of like, what happens here? What happens in this? This is a basic bonding conversation that your whole nervous system is wired to respond to. And so suddenly it was like, after I'd done the study, I thought, I don't know what we did and why was it so powerful anyway? And then suddenly I realized, wait a minute, this is John Bowlby. What we did was create bonding conversations. Oh my God. And then the whole of attachment, which was it was just about mothers and infants at this point, okay? This was, when was this? I don't know. You know, this was way ago. And it suddenly hit me, my God, these are bonding conversations. This is all about attachment. This is John Bowlby. Why aren't people talking about adult attachment? And they weren't talking about it. Even the social psychologists at that point, I think there was one study, they weren't. So things have changed a lot. And I'm as passionate about attachment science as I was back then. As I feel like I found my holy grail and nothing's changed. I've never seen anything that is richer, deeper, more profound, more useful for us as human beings, more useful for a basis for psychotherapy. So I'm still on this journey.
So what would you tell your younger self, what you've learned since the beginning of being a therapist?
Oh, it's fascinating, huge questions, lady.
Well, I've learned that I'm going deep with EFT, so I'm here. I'm here for all the deepness and depth. That's
What would I say I've learned? Oh, I don't know how to answer that. I feel like I've learned from all my clients and all my wonderful colleagues and research and from attachment. I feel like I've become clearer and clearer about who we are.
mm-hmm.
And if we're going to survive as a species, and certainly if we're going to build any kind of civilized world,
Mm-hmm.
we have to know who we are. You know, are we predators? Are we just for ourselves? Is man selfish, predatory, aggressive, competitive? Is capitalism, is unbridled capitalism the way to go then? Because that's who we are. Is sex about getting the best orgasm and finding the person who can give you the best orgasm? So it's really a person as an instrument to an orgasm. Is that who we are? No, that's not who we are. We can be those things, but no, in essence, that's not who we are. Those are distortions. We're bonding human beings, and we're stronger and healthier and more complete in safe societies in bonded relationships, you know. And I mean, sex could be many things. It's a commodity now in our society. It's used to sell everything, but and sex can be recreation, and yeah, okay. But I mean, in most people's lives, I mean, the essence of sex is it's a bonding activity. Do we teach people about that? No, of course we don't. Do we, you know, like sex education is a joke. We just teach people about how the body works during the sex act. Well, give me a break. That's like teaching tango and just teaching the first 4 steps. You know, it's like, duh. You know, so I think if we know who we are, and we understand that empathy is wired in. If we understand empathy is wired into us as human beings, the question is, what blocks it? Not, oh, well, we're just not that way, we're aggressive and we're this, and so forget it, you have to train empathy for 1,000 years, or it's just never going to happen. Just accept that we're aggressive and competitive and deal with that. And, you know, no, we're wired for empathy. So then the question is, what blocks it? Oh, that's manageable. That's a manageable issue. So I think, and of course, what blocks it mostly is fear. What blocks it is overwhelming emotions. If I'm just dealing with overwhelming emotions, a tsunami inside me, I don't even have the energy to look into your face and tune into what you're feeling, right? Because I'm fighting for my life inside my own chest here. So, so I think if we understand ourselves better, solutions are, you know, we find things that fit for us and we have ways forward. But if we don't understand who we are, this is huge. I mean, I love this interview. You're very good, because I can't remember giving an interview like this before. I'm exhausted, and you've got me talking about all these huge things. I don't know how you manage that. Whatever.
I think it's our dynamic, and I love all your wisdom. It's just I could like continue listening to all of your answers and your wisdom, and there's so many stories. I love the way you're presenting your ideas. It's so tangible and so visual. I think that's so helpful to people because the way you